Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we've got a real treat for you as we talk with the creative team responsible for the hit NBC show, This Is Us. Before we get started, I am going to introduce you to the participants today in our roundtable, beginning with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Janita Davis in Indiana, Bonnie DeSong in Chicago, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, and Al McGee in South Florida. DJ Chris Stiles in Ohio. Okay, we've got as a treat, we have some extended family joining us today. We're gonna start with Tessa Smith. Tessa, what market are you in?
I am in upstate New York.
Okay, in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we've got more and more. DuPay. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I will see you guys on the other side.
Hello, Kay, and the crew. The episode last night was really, really great. And you guys have done a lot of heavy lifting this season. I want to know, first, getting away from the final episode, what was like the episode that you were most proud of working on this season? And why? And if it was last night, of course, explain. Thanks.
I could selfishly say my episode. I enjoyed being able to work with two brothers, hashing out some of their history, just because I have two brothers, and it was, kind of fun to tap into that.
You took my answer, John. I was going to selfishly say my episode. No, I did. I mean, because I got to work with Kay, and it was her directorial, debut on the show. And so that was really cool. And I think just we had all been excited to dig into learning about who Randall's birth mother was. And so it was just a fun experience all the way around, working with all the actors that we did. And just that couple, I forget how long it took, but that long drawn out time of COVID production was really fun, and it was a joy. So
that's awesome. I would say funny enough, I would say that it's not even an episode. I think Randall's arc this season was a highlight in a lot of ways. There was a lot of Eboni and Jon can sort of attest. There was a lot of both in front of in our Zoom room, and then also many sort of phone calls and many sidebar conversations. But I think that his arc from the beginning all the way to the final sort of conversation, because in the draft that Dan did, we sort of went back and forth about sort of what him and Rebecca would say in a lot of different moments and stuff. And it was the first time. It was the tightest Randall arc that I've ever been a part of, and it's always a joy to sort of watch and see how he plays out. But this coming from that opening salvo where we were in the pre-shooting anything for episodes 1 and 2, and then going into that, I think his arc was just really, really, the payoffs were great. The setups and payoffs were fantastic. So that was just a joy, just kind of watch how each of those choices would weave out, because it's like, there's even in Danielle's episode with the transracial adoption group, that was a big thing. I pulled my friend in to come have conversation in the room. There was just so much, like it was actually looking back on it, it's like a surprising amount of Dan let a lot of things happen this season that I was just very proud, grateful for and impressed by, to sort of really allow for Randall's arc to be something that was different for him and foreign for him, but allowed it to kind of exist in the way that it sort of came out. So that was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Al McGee, and I write for www.yeticket.com. I'm here in sunny Florida.
Hey.
Well, my question is to Dorsey and Dana. Now, the next season is your last season. Now, how would you go about trying to get work with another TV show? Would you use this as, well, I know you use this as your platform. And how did you get an opportunity to get to write for This Is Us? Because it's a very, very excellent show. And I'm sure there's millions of other writers there who, around who wants to get on this show and write, but how did you do it? And also, what would you do next once the show is over? Dana and Dorsey?
I mean, I can, let's see. I don't know. I don't know how I got it, frankly. I definitely feel blessed and very lucky. I know it's tough to get a writing gig on any show, but to get one on a show that's so successful and one that I was already a fan of beforehand is probably even luckier. To be honest, I think what kind of opened up my profile as a writer and even gave me the shot was I wrote a feature script that made the blacklist, and that helped me get an agent at CAA. And literally, my TV agent, the first interview she set up was with Isaac and Elizabeth, the showrunners for This Is Us. So, it took time. It's definitely a grind, the industry that we work in, but once the opportunity came, it came fast, and I snatched it up. And then I guess going forward, I love being able to work in both TV and film. And I guess when this show is over, I'll continue to try to work in the feature side, and hopefully, if I'm not burned out on the TV side, I guess I'll just try to start over and try to find that lucky staffing gig again.
Yeah. So I was actually, before I got the job on This Is Us, which is my first staffed writing gig, I was on my 10th year, I think, working for Fox Sports. And so trying to get into the business, and actually the thing that really changed everything for me was I got into the Sundance Episodic Lab. And that year really, I love everyone over there. They're so nurturing and supportive. And really once I got into that program, they really helped me move forward in my career in ways that I hadn't in the past several years before that. And so, and then once I got into Sundance, I met, I got an agent and all those things, and then eventually got the gig on This Is Us, and couldn't be more thankful to God that was the show that I landed with, because I feel like my time on the show has been, our bosses, Dan Fogelman and Isaac and Elizabeth, everyone on the show has been so nurturing and so gracious with their time and with their talents and with their advice. And I feel like I've grown so much just being on the show. So I think that, after this season, I'm looking forward to, it's a bit like scary, because it's, I've been on this show for my entire writing career, but it's also exciting because I think that my time on the show has really set me up to, for my next opportunity that's going to come. So.
Yeah, that's another, just to piggyback on that, like just how talented and nice and like patient everyone is in the writer's room is just amazing. And it is a little scary. Like when it's all done, what are the chances we find something just as amazing? Hopefully, every writer's room is that great, but I don't know.
Well, thank you very much. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just said we will.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And you all have a very successful show, and you all are very great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Tessa with mamasgeeky.com, and I'm just curious, I guess this is for all of you. Have you ever used any inspiration from your real life in This Is Us?
Yeah. In my last episode, there's a scene where the teenage Randall and teenage Kevin kind of get into an argument in a cab, and then it spills out of the cab and they kind of wrestle on the ground. That's literally what me and my older brother did, maybe 10 or 15 years ago in front of our parents' house on like a Thanksgiving night. Not good, but made for solid television.
Dana Abercrombie, the Coalition. I was wondering for any of the writers, we know that season 6, well, the finale kind of set up, and also throughout the show of season 5, it kind of set up what we're going to see in season 6 in regards to the next generation and the children. So I was wondering, I know you can't say much yet, but will we be able to see more of the growth of, will we be staying with the parents as well, or will it be mainly focused on the kid?
I think that in an interesting way, I think that because our show is very much started you with our, Kate, Randall, Kevin, those are the people who you're going to, that's the show, right? So it's like all the people around them, all the timelines around them, as long as they're always going to be anchored by their story. So it's not, so I think anyone who thinks that there's some sort of a handoff to, anything like that, all we ever see only informs their stories. So whenever you see Jack Damon in the future, it's because you're learning more about Kate or Toby. Whenever you see anyone in any timeline, it's because you're learning more about those particular characters. So the show is not deviating point of views from our big three.
Hi everyone, Carolyn for So Here's What Happened podcast and Carolyn Talks. So my question is for all three of you, but I'll begin with Kay. And the story of Rebecca dealing with her cognitive impairment, that to me is very personal because I also have cognitive impairment. So I want to ask you about, for Kay, directing those scenes with Mandy and like working through how she's going to portray what her memory loss and her disorientation. And for the writer, it's just like building that story around that, I guess, developing disability that she's learned to live with, and also the family learning to live with that from the perspective of her children, and then also of Miguel as her husband.
Yeah, I can talk about it, but I'll also invite Eboni to talk about it as well, because she wrote an episode, Lights and Shadows.
Lights and Shadows, yeah.
That specifically talked about, that was when Rebecca found out that she had cognitive impairment. I can speak from it. I haven't directed Mandy in any of those scenes, but I can speak from the genesis of it. But I think, Eboni, you can speak sort of writing that.
Yeah, I can just say from just to add on to everything that Kay said about her sort of coming into this character, and I know that she has done a lot of research on what that would look like for her, and just for that episode as well in Lights and Shadows, we talked with a lot of doctors about it and asked a lot of questions and just made sure we got, the verbiage correct, and what would the actual diagnosis be, and what would that look like? What would the tests actually look like that you would take when you're at the hospital doing that? And so on set, we actually had a doctor who was on set for all of those scenes to just correct us and make sure that we were getting it right. So that's what we did.
Great, thank you. From my own personal perspective, I can see you got it right.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Bonnie DeShong from Chicago, Bonnie's Eye to the Sky.com, as well as I host Bonnie's Eye on the FM Omni channel 95.1 Chicago, your heartbeat for soul. And I write for the Chicago Crusader. From the very beginning, the one thing that caught me was that how well you guys went from the past, the present, and the future, and teased us with the future, just like you did last night. When writing it and directing it, do different people take different sections, or are you able to mix it all together? How does that work? Because I sit there and my mind is blown. How do they go from here to here to here and make it seamless?
I remember it's like we get asked that a lot, and I never understand how to answer it. And it's interesting because it's sort of like, I guess because I don't know how we don't know how not to do it that way, if that makes sense. It's just like it's kind of take yourself, Bonnie, for example, like you've lived the life that you've lived, and there was a moment when you were 12 and something happened, and then there was something happened yesterday. It's not hard for you to be the same person in both of those. You're still Bonnie, right? And you were Bonnie at 12, you were Bonnie at 30, you were Bonnie now, like you've just been Bonnie. And so let's say you happen to write that day at 12 and that day at 30 and then that day now, and then you gave that script to a director and there were 3 actors playing you, and then you just shot it on the different days that you shoot it, and then the editor edits it the way you wrote it, and then you put it on TV. Like, it's like, I hope it's not like, it's like it's really just that. Like, it's like, it's not, and then we slug line it. So we'd be like, 99. So we know that everything there is happening in 99, and then present day. So it's all present day, or 79. And then we know it's all 79. And so it's like, I think it's so uncomplicated. I think other people are more impressed with us than what actually the work is. So it's like, it's a little hard for us sometimes to be like, it's, if you've ever written a script, if you took your slug line and put a different year on it, someone's gonna have to account for that. And so it's like, that's kind of how, that's a terrible answer. So I apologize, but it's like,
I was gonna say, it's more the other departments. I'm like, how they deal with the time periods, and
so when for us, the characters are, like I just said, like the characters are all, everyone on this phone call is alive now, which means you were alive years ago. So it's like, so anything from your life is relevant as far as our storylines go. So it's like, if you wrote the episode based on this time when you were a baby, all of that stuff, and then you give it to our like department heads, now they basically say like, okay, well, she was 15 in 99. That's going to look different from her being XYZ age in 2021. So let's account for that. So it's just like, it's like any other show or gig or, anything like that. So, yeah.
You make it sound so easy. It still baffles me. Okay. But I want to thank you.
I'll say, even for last night, like Toby has been teased in the future that he has some sort of distance with the family. So everyone who watches the show knew that. And then all you found out last night was why. But it's like, you already knew. It's just, we just chose last night to show you why. So it's like, it's just been there. So it's like, for us, it's far less complicated, but for the audience, because you don't know that that's coming, that's why it's shocking. But you all knew that, like, why is Toby doesn't think he can go see Rebecca? Clearly he might not be with Kate. So like, you knew he probably wasn't with Kate. But it's just last night you happen to be like, oh, for reals, he's not with Kate. It was like, yeah, you already knew that. I always say that. I'm like, people are always surprised with our twist, but it's like, you already knew. So,
but we don't want to know. That's what it is. It's like, we want to know, but we don't want to know.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to shout out Chicago. I'm originally from Chicago. I'm wearing my White Sox hat.
White Sox outside.
Hello, my name is Kobe from New York with different publications, including Essence, The Times, and New York Magazine. And I guess my question is, in terms of how the characters are written, are there evolutions to particular characters that surprised you, if you think of, the arc of them from season 1 to now?
I don't know if surprise is the thing. I think, I don't know if surprise is the thing, because I think when you're breaking them and crafting them, you kind of know where they're going, you know what I mean? So it's like, you're not necessarily surprised in that way, but I think that the growth is always nice. I think sort of like, season 1, there was so much of writing Kate's depression and her sadness and her beating herself up. We see her as a teenager sort of closing in on herself, the relationship with Mark, all of those things kind of put her in a place where she didn't really love herself. I remember when we were doing the episode where we went to like 2006, and that was a hard episode to break, because it was just sort of like putting her at the diner, having her with this married guy. It was just sort of like Kate in a really bad emotional state. And I think what's great about it is sort of like watching that character just blossom and coming into her own, being a mother, being a wife who has agency for herself, finding a way to love herself that's, you know, not only connected to her weight, but regardless of it. You know what I mean? I think that was a big one. There was a lot of work that fat camp, that thing that we did in season 1 was a really rough couple of like weeks, just because it was like you had to just kind of sit with someone who just did not she actively had to not love herself. So I think it's sort of like now coming full circle in a way that she's in a job she loves. It's weird because Rebecca mentioned it, and it's like, I know for me anyway, I'm happy for her, because I feel like we were all very sad for her for a very long time, having to sort of put Chrissy through a lot of unfortunate conversations and scales and, you know, things like that we don't have to do anymore. So that's nice. I'll say that. I think I'm grateful for that. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, I don't know if surprise is the right word, but I kind of find Kevin's arc kind of interesting and cool, like him trying to live up to, you know, the standards set by his father, Jack, who was kind of, you know, America's dad kind of thing, and him just tripping and falling along the way, and his family being there to pick him up, and everything that he kind of learns through that roller coaster ride. And clearly after last night, he still's got a ways to go before he either finds acceptance, self-acceptance, satisfaction with his life, or whatnot. So, I mean, I'm kind of excited to see where he goes in the final season.
Hi, everyone. DJ Chris Styles, WOBU 95.9 FM, Cleveland, Ohio. First of all, great show. I'm hooked on it. I would go back to past episode. One of the things I want to know is the character Randall. I think his character is fascinating, very fascinating to me. To grow up in quote unquote in a white family in this different environment, and then we go and see the issues. How difficult for you to write that character? This for the two writers, to write that character, to seemingly see like he had a great life, then we just start to see this other side where what it could have been, and the issues started to come through now. Like, oh, okay, I see why he's having these issues. We see having these identity issues. Like how. And with that being said, how is it to get this character right? Because we see black men on TV and we don't always see the great character, and either overcompensate or they undercompensate. But you kind of got it right in the middle, like how I am or how the guys that I know I grew up with are like that. Can you expand more about that?
I don't know. I'm glad to hear that we got it right. I don't know. I mean, I can speak at least for me, for his recent kind of journey towards his identity. It seems like we're drawing from reality, and speaking to, you know, Kay's friend, and just doing research. You know, a lot of transracial adoptees do have a facade of everything's fine until some kind of breakthrough, whether it's through a group experience or therapy, where they realize, oh, there's other things I need to tackle. And then those things have to come out then. So I think that was just an organic, and it seems like a natural thing that adoptees go through. So that was helpful to just draw on reality. But yeah, in terms of Randall's characters, I didn't create the characters, so I don't know how to speak on that.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Sure.
You know, I love the episode. I fell off my chair at the end, so I want to thank you for the bruise on my butt. But yeah, I just wanted to say there's so much evolution throughout the series, and the inclusion of new characters that we grow to love and get attached to. With the series approaching the end with one more season, what was the process to make sure every character gets their due this season to prepare for the end? Even the minor characters like Nikki, who has his moment, Madison, potentially Sophie, Miguel, and even the kids, Asia being pregnant in the future, Annie, Tess, Jack, and the rest of them and their kids.
I don't know if there was a process, guys. Is there like it's not any process outside of.
Well, I know that I think sometimes at the beginning of each season, and especially going into this last season, we are having those conversations as far as like what we feel like we owe to finish the season off and give every character sort of finish off their stories and their arcs for the series. So I think, I don't know if there's like a specific strategy to it, but I think that there is definitely thought put in place at the beginning as a sort of game plan to get us started and make sure that we do, we do kind of fill in those holes or anything that was left open-ended.
Yeah, I think like even the examples that you set out, all because of the ridiculous privilege and luxury that we're so crazy grateful for to have been picked up multiple seasons each time, and then knowing that we had a season, like we in season 3 we knew we were ending in season 6, so it's like knowing that the kind of runway you have a 3-year lead on a network TV show, that's like rare. And so for that reason, there were things that we just knew. For example, like Deja being pregnant, we know why that's the case. So it's not like a part of us that's like, oh, let's figure, like we know what the payoff is going to be for that. We knew about Toby and Kate. There are many other things that we sort of like last year, the cabin that we met Kevin at. So we knew that there was going to be an ask. So it's like you're really, it's a rare thing, but you're watching a show that is very well plotted, and like the details are very much like they come as a surprise, obviously, to the audience, but it's like for us, like those touchstones are all already there. So it's like even now, like people have always been asking, well, where's Miguel and Rebecca? Give us their backstory. It's like based on everything that we've seen this season, it's like the runway for their backstory is like right, it's like you're gonna get it, you know what I mean? And like so it's like it's one of those things. Again, I always like whenever people are shocked, I'm like, we told, like, if you knew what was coming. So it's just sort of like that. So it would be crazy if like you don't get a Rebecca Miguel story in season 6, like that doesn't, so it's like it's building towards that. And so, for example, the Rebecca Miguel backstory you couldn't have, because what we've been dealing with is post Jack's death in that 99 period with the kid, with Kevin going off to Hollywood, Randall getting with Beth. That's not when Rebecca and Miguel got to, so it's just sort of like, we're not going to encroach in our storytelling because people want to see XYZ. It's very much, again, the privilege of knowing when we end, everything is really kind of, laying out where it needs to sort of lay out. So I think that everyone will have an ending and an arc there, but it's something that, to your point, what's the process? I think the process is just sort of breaking the seasons and stories. There'll be surprises for us that we come up with, but we know the points where things need to hit.
Everyone, Katya Woods, Couple Soul Show. My question specifically is about Randall and Beth, because to me, their relationship is evolving, and this season we got Beth a little bit more stepping into her light. Talk about what it's like if you are part of that storyline, because me as a married person that has been married for a while, very rarely do we get to see a happily married Black couple going through real life things and working them out like a married couple does. You don't have like some type of craziness and all of that. Talk about what it's like to being able to have realistic Black love,
I've never been married, so I'm not sure I can speak.
Neither have we.
Neither have I. True, very true.
Somebody's writing it. You ever have like your parents or somebody to say, what, I may not be married, but I don't think this is something that feels right.
I love. My parents were married for I think over 40 years, so I love seeing it. I'm as big of a fan of them on TV as a couple on TV as you are, but I don't know, Kay, Eboni.
I was just going to say, we're all saying we're not married, but there are a lot of people on our staff and on our show who are married and who have been in long marriages. And so I think that a lot of times when, some of that realism that comes from that is coming from their own personal lives and challenges and things of that nature. So they definitely bring that realism, I think, that you are seeing in Beth and Randall's marriage.
In a lot of ways, it's the intention of the person who's writing it, because it's like, like Eboni wrote, our little island girl. I wrote R&B, so it's like I wrote their vows and like their wedding and their year, like, so it's like, I haven't said any of those to people. It's like we're writers, so it's just sort of like, well, we can tap into the emotion of people and all that kind of stuff. And so that part is, but I think the intention, I think it's less about the realistic marriages that you're seeing on screen with Randall and Beth, and in a lot of ways, because I've thought about that question. I'll be very honest, like Randall and Beth Dan said from day one, they were never going to break up. Like they were never going to break up. There was never going to be infidelity. That was the intention behind it. So it's like, so there's no part of us. It's like, what if, like, it's just sort of not part of it. And so therein lies our intention, right? So it's like, if you are told that you're not going to break up this couple and there's not going to be infidelity, then you just get to have fun with life and just sort of like see what that is. So it's like, I think the fights come, there's no like, oh no. So that's part of it. And I think, in a lot of ways, and this is going to sound bizarre, but I think there was a question that was asked about the ideology behind Randall. In a lot of ways, it's again, the intention behind it. Our showrunner's personality is most reflected in Randall. So it's like Dan really thinks in a lot of ways like Randall. I think over the years he's had to adjust that, but it's just sort of like, but it's like so for him, and with any writer, if you're writing characters that you care about, that's reflected. When you see Black characters that are not written well, it's because the person who's writing it doesn't like them. And so it's just sort of like it's a simple kind of, it's a simple notion. It's like the writers, the three of us are the only Black writers on the show, and all of them write for all that, we all write for all the characters. And so it's just sort of like, we like them, the white people like them as well. And so that's reflected in it. If Dan could not wrap his head around Randall would be written poorly, because Dan would not be able to wrap his head around Randall, but he sees Randall as himself. And so when you're a person who has empathy and you see a character as yourself, you're going to write them thoughtfully. And therein lies, what you see on screen. So I think it's always, anytime, always question the person who created that character, because the likelihood is they're written poorly because the person who's writing it doesn't see them as valuable. And then watch for who they see as valuable in the content.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Of course.
Well, speaking of intention, hey, I'm Rhonda. Speaking of intention, when it's all said and done next season, what do you guys think will be the takeaway from This Is Us, like the ultimate takeaway?
In front of her, like creatively, or behind this, like, or it doesn't matter?
I'd say both. Like, I mean, you guys, know where it's going more so than we do. So ultimately, what is the intention? What will be the impact? What do you hope to accomplish when it's all said and done?
Oh, okay. As far as like how the audience is going to receive the material.
Well, not necessarily how they're going to receive it. What do you intend for them to receive? Like, what will this journey mean for you guys? What has it been created to be?
I know personally, that feels a little lofty for me. I mean, I came in, I think, the end of season 3, beginning of season 4. I don't know. I feel like I look at it from an entertainment standpoint, and, I just want people to, continue to cry, continue to laugh and smile, feel warmth from the show. Maybe inspire them to reach out to family members more often. I mean, all that's kind of a generic, but I mean, if they can get that from the show, I mean, I'd be proud of that.
I don't know. I mean, I think that I am trying to think of the intention part of the question, but I think, I guess, looking back on the show, once it ends, I think people will look at it as a show that I think, at least for myself, I think one of the things that drew me to the show before I was staffed on it and when I was a fan was that it was a show that reflected me in ways, you know, that I wasn't seeing on television. It was a show that had conversations that, you know, real conversations, and tackled issues that, you know, people can relate to. And, you know, I remember before I got staffed on the show, there was an episode, I think I told you about it, Kay. I had never seen this before, but I think it was in season 2, because Deja had alopecia, or she had, yeah. And I remember watching the episode when Beth does her hair and helps her cover up her bald spots, and literally weeping because I had never seen that on television before. I just had never seen a woman going through, let alone a young Black woman going through hair loss issues. And literally that was what my mother and my auntie used to do for me. And so when I think about the show, when I think about This Is Us, that's kind of how I view it and how I see it. So.
It's so great because hearing you guys answer it, it just sort of like, because I was trying to like wrap my head around sort of the intention part of it. I think that because Ebony, like how that came, my mom has alopecia. My mom's had alopecia for years. And that season, there were like 2 Black writers, I think. So it was just sort of like explaining what alopecia was, explaining how Deja would get it, and like doing all that kind of stuff. And then like, and again, it's sort of like Dan's always very much like, how like if he doesn't know it, he trusts that, you know, someone else does, and like goes for it and with it. If you said the word alopecia to him right now, he will forget that it ever existed. It's not even a thing that like, it's just like, he was like, oh yeah, that was great. But it's like, it just, you know, but it's something that he knows. So I think the big thing that I would say the intention is that all of our stories, every person on the Zoom, all of our stories are significant. They don't have to involve dragons or monsters or whatever. It's like our show has the highs of taking your kid to a recital, to going to the grocery store, to telling someone you love them, to falling asleep and realizing that you're safe. It's like, we are high concept in that way and low concept in that way. And it's like the day-to-day of living and existing with each other is really important. I think that's something that, you know, I think our show, we strive to do as storytellers. Every single person in the room, whether it's Jon's stories about his brother, whether it's Ebony's experience as a former ballet dancer, whether it's just sort of like all of our stories are reflected on the screen, which hopefully allows everyone who's watching the show to feel like their stories are reflected on the screen. So it's this idea that like, hopefully, I think, and Ebony, you said it, like, hopefully you walk away from This Is Us having felt seen in a way that you probably haven't felt seen, you know, before.
Just to echo that, like, I feel like it's a sneaky cool show, like to be able to like continue to like shock our audience without being a crazy high concept television series is really cool. I mean, I remember watching, it's one of the best pilots I've watched, and I watched it before the hype, and I was like, oh shit, like it caught me at the end with the time jumping. And just to be able to continue doing that, like it's fun and exciting. And I think if we can continue to do that, I mean, just again, from an entertainment surface level, I mean, it'd be awesome to continue to do that for the audience.
It's like, I remember, I will never forget it. And I think it was like the day that it locked in for me anyway. And it was like the second week in the room, Dan had asked us to go like do a bunch of pitches for William, the Ron Stevens-Jones's character, just sort of like what his arc was going to be and all that kind of stuff. And we all came in, like, I've been watching like, you know, a bunch of true crime stuff. And like, I had this whole thing about he was a grifter, he was scam artist, all this kind of stuff. And we all came in with the craziest stuff, like the craziest pitches and stuff. And we all shared it with Dan. He sat there and like, he like laughs and like nods and like is snacking on something. And then like at the end of all of this, like this was still early, so we all thought that we had to impress him. As years go by, we realized that less and less. But it's just sort of like, we were so ready to, you know, get him excited. But then after we all pitched for like 2 hours, he was like, I love all this. I think all that's so great. And it was like, what if, right? Hear me out. And he was like, what if William is just like a guy who's had a really hard life? and who wants to reconnect with his son. And I think in that moment when he said that, it like clicked for me what the show was about. And that's the intention of the show. It's like, these are people who are just like trying their best to figure stuff out. And it's like, if you go with that for every storyline, like you'll likely not mess up too much.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
It would have been a cool grifter story though.
I was like, oh, I didn't know about this.
Awesome. KJ came in with some wild stuff. It was just like, I was like, oh, that's a good show. Like, but
I missed that part of this.
It was just like, no, it was just like a nice guy. We were all like, huh.
And I can picture Dan saying that.
Just because he will not cut you off for nothing. He'll just like let you go. He's thinking, half listening probably, because he's already started his mind wandering to like the brilliance that he's about to give you. But it was just sort of like, he just knew what he wanted. And I think like, you know, Eboni, Jon and I are very much, you know, and like watch our boss who has such a clarity of vision of what he wants. So it can never go off the rails because he'll always stare it back to like, well, no, this is actually, yeah.
Hopefully he'll bottle that. We need more clarity of vision.
Yeah.
Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. Kay, Eboni, and Jon, we thank you for providing us with wonderful TV. The show for so many years has literally been the best there is on television. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, and today with our friends, we thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
You guys were
Thank you.
fabulous.
Thank you.